Let's take a look live now at Gaza. The sun has set fully now, and in the darkness, we wrap up the fourth day of war as Hamas militants, extremists, killers, terrorists, there's so many words you could use, let's just call them evil, attacked Israel. This time yesterday, we saw explosions over Gaza and Israel's Iron Dome shooting rockets out of the sky. So at least it was working at that point, because at the very beginning of this last Friday night into Saturday morning, the dome was being crippled by thousands of those missiles coming across. Israeli military now is also reporting the death toll has risen now from Hamas's terror attack. It's now more than 1,000. We're also awaiting President Biden, who will address the nation in an hour. The world will be watching him. Quite a bigger audience than he normally would get, perhaps. It will also be the first time in 2 days, and the first time we will hear from the president since we learned that at least 11 Americans are among those murdered by Hamas terrorists, and Americans taken hostage. We heard from some of their family members in a news conference earlier today. So the president spoke on Saturday, but since that time, we've learned so much more. And we're now getting new and disturbing reports about the unimaginable atrocities Hamas is committing. With every moment, we hear more. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-hosts, Kayleigh McEnany and Emily Campagno. Also with us today, Fox Business anchor and co-host of The Bottom Line, Dagan McDowell, and Fox News contributor and retired U.S. Marine bomb technician, Joey Jones. We thank him for his service always, and we are glad he's with us today. We're learning some 70 Hamas terrorists armed with guns and grenades stormed the usually quiet Kfar kibbutz in southern Israel, killing anyone, men, women, children, anybody they saw. And reporters from I-24 News toured the, quote, scene of devastation where soldiers worked to remove bodies of victims who were brutally murdered in their homes. Now, the details of this are heart-thumping. They're heartbreaking. But we want you to know there are no pictures to go with this, but this reporter tells us what's happening. Let's watch together.
It's hard to even explain exactly just the mass casualties that happened right here. In fact, the Israeli military says they still don't have a clear number, but I'm talking to some of the soldiers and they say what they've witnessed as they've been walking through these different houses, these different communities, babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said. Gunned down, families completely gunned down in their beds.
Mike Tobin is live for us in Tel Aviv. And Mike, under the cover of darkness now, we await to see what Israel will do next if that involves a ground invasion. And when you hear what that reporter just said about what's happened on the ground with Hamas, it's breathtaking. And people can understand why there might be an invasion next.
It certainly is breathtaking, and as night is falling, again, the rockets start flying out of the Gaza Strip. Here in about the middle of the country, what used to be out of range of Palestinian rockets, Tel Aviv, the red alert sirens, warning of incoming rockets, have sounded at least 3 times today. Personally, I've heard upwards of 5 impacts. In fact, as the sun was going down, we just heard some fresh impacts. You talk about Kfar Aza. Now, this is a kibbutz, a communal farm. The type of people who move into a kibbutz are usually somewhat hippie-ish, artsy people who go there to grow their own food, to do their art projects, to live peacefully. But they knew that they lived near the Gaza Strip. Some of them had even joked, I've talked with them in the past, that they consider themselves to be human shields. But obviously no one expected this kind of devastation. What we hear from the crews that have been through Kfar Aza to the northeast side of the Gaza Strip is that people had huddled in the safe rooms that many Israeli homes have, where they can lock a big heavy metal door and be protected from bombs, that they had huddled in the safe rooms and they were massacred in those safe rooms. And you heard the tale from that reporter of a soldier telling her that infants had been decapitated. So it's a place where people go to live out a very peaceful life, and they met with horrific violence in that little kibbutz to the northeast side of the Gaza Strip. Meantime, the punishing and unprecedented airstrike continues into air campaign continues into the Gaza Strip with fresh strikes today. You cannot strike into the densely populated Gaza Strip without resulting in civilian casualties. The Palestinian Health Department is now reporting some 830 Palestinians have been killed. Compare that with the 900 Israelis who were targeted and killed. You have the Israeli ground forces, artillery, Merkava tanks at the ready to roll into the Gaza Strip for what Israel promises will be the dismantling of the Izzadin al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, the military capability of Hamas. We know that the Israeli Security Cabinet is meeting in just a short time now, and we'll see if that gets the tanks moving on the ground there. A very ominous situation in the Gaza Strip. I should also let you know that all the way to the far north of the country, on the border with Lebanon, the sirens have sounded again late this afternoon, creating that threat, a very ominous threat of opening another front in this war if Iranian-backed Hezbollah gets involved. Harris?
Quickly about that, what gets those sirens to sound? Is it much the same situation with missiles coming across, or what's happening to the north?
When they detect the movement of the missiles, and then there's decisions made as far as the range of the missiles, how far they can make it. Some of it's automated, and some of it's just old-fashioned. People looking at the sky, seeing what made it past the Iron Dome, and what seems to have the ability to carry far enough.
So, is it propaganda, or what we're seeing? Some reports that maybe Iran has the ability also and has been firing, or is that kind of in the terrorist nomenclature so they can just scare everybody on every front?
Well, it almost doesn't matter, because one thing is very clear, particularly with the rockets that are coming out of the Gaza Strip. Those are supplied by Iran. Back when I was here, and back when Hamas was more independent, what they had, the Qassam rockets, were essentially flying pipe bombs that they made in machine shops and little clandestine labs. They weren't very effective at all, and they didn't have much range. That has changed now with the rockets coming all the way here to Tel Aviv. As far as any incoming missiles coming from Iran, that would be a heck of a thing. I haven't heard that yet.
It would be. It would be. But as part, as part of just scaring everybody. Mike, we'll come back to you. I know that there are times late into the night where this really heats up. We'll see what happens behind you there in Tel Aviv. Stay safe, my friend. Thank you. Joey Jones, I want to get your take on the fight that Israel has on its hands now.
Yeah, going into Gaza is going to be very bloody. We talk about the Iraq War, and we always bring up Fallujah because that was one of the worst battles that we had to fight. I wasn't there for that. I came in a year later. Fallujah times 100. Because in Fallujah, it was urban warfare. In Gaza will be not just a home field advantage, but a fortified position that the entire city is. I think Israel's made the calculated decision the only way to root out Hamas is to go into Gaza, and I think they will bomb everything they can before they send their troops in there to get any type of strategic advantage. But once they send troops in there, two things you can count on: a lot of dead Israeli soldiers and a lot of dead Palestinian civilians. That's what
because they're going to hide as human shields. The terrorists are going to use them to save their own lives. You've fought different types of enemies. How would you describe Hamas as an enemy?
I went to Afghanistan for almost 6 months taking apart bombs. I put a lot of my guys on a bird missing limbs that didn't make it. I watched a lot of civilians die from bombs going off. 2 days haunt me most. One was a baby that was dipped in boiling water because their uneducated idea was that the baby must have been possessed. And the other one was a 9-year-old girl that fell out of a tree onto a bomb. We had to go pick her up before we could go in and do our operation to respect their culture. What's happening in Israel right now? 40 babies potentially beheaded, women mistreated in the most horrific ways. This is a Trey Ying's tweet. He says, "Imagine the worst thing possible that can be done to humans. Humans did all of those and more to Israeli civilians. Babies beheaded, people burned alive in their homes, women raped and dragged through the streets. If I were an Israeli right now, I would have nothing but a bloodthirst, and that's what the world's going to have to reconcile."
Dagan, let's talk about that kibbutz, that Kfar Aza right now, and really, for terrorists, that's more than just their thirst to kill. They're signaling to all of their people across the globe who think and want to be with them, Hezbollah and so many others, that look at what we're doing. And they're getting attention from some of these other countries. Iran supporting this. They're getting what they're thirsting for.
There are two things. And Barry Weiss, who was on the news channel earlier, just simply said, behind emotion, wearing her emotion, the world needs to wake up to a massacre of unspeakable proportions. And you see it around the globe in front of the Sydney Opera House, gas the Jews. And you hear it on college campuses that they are blaming Israel. And that in a world where words have been violence, they cannot speak out and call out brutality. And when babies are being beheaded and women are being raped and children being taken hostage, people in this country filled with vile anti-Semitism and lacking a heart and a brain and a soul cannot call out that brutality. It's just mind-boggling. So this is, in a matter of days, really revealed who people are and where we are. But to what's going on with Iran, and this is, I doubt we hear from President Biden this afternoon. I almost doubt.
Oh, you don't think he'll talk about Iran?
I do not think he will bring up Iran in
$6 billion in sanctions release? You don't think he'll bring that?
The bigger issue beyond the $6 billion is that, and Kayleigh brought up this number, the $40 billion plus that Iran has earned in oil sales under this administration because they have pulled back on enforcement of sanctions. Iran's oil production is at north of 3 million barrels a day, headed to about 3.5 million. It's exporting largely to China, 2 million barrels a day. That money, it's $40 billion plus, is going straight to Iran, and that money is going straight to fund Hamas, Hezbollah, who has yet to get in this fight. And they, with the Quds Force, organized this campaign of terror and death.
You hear it with every report. You heard it from Palcott earlier. You get it from Mike Tobin now. And then some of our international reporters from around the globe are saying it too. The sirens going off north. You know, Hezbollah clapped back right away in all of this. They want in this fight. They want to do something. But nobody is saying, Joanne, I know you wanted to get a quick one in. Nobody is saying how Israel will respond to that and how many more people it will take to handle multi-fronts.
No, what Dagan was talking about with the money, Brett Baer asked John Kirby about the money that Iran has been able to rake in, and he wanted to pivot back to the $6 billion. That's an easier talking point than the truth of what's happening in Iran. What I think back to is I believe it was John Kirby on September 19th saying to the American people, I believe it was John Kirby, I have to look, that basically if Iran is found to promote any type of terrorism, there would be consequences. He was so sure that it wouldn't happen with this $6 billion, I guess, that he would say that, and now we're looking at potentially American citizens held hostage. And, you know, I interviewed Brian Mast on Saturday, and he said, Americans go and save Americans.
Right.
That would be a big step, and one that I'm not sure the Biden administration
We didn't do it in Afghanistan behind enemy lines. I mean, Emily, we talked about it on this very couch, where other countries in Europe, after Kabul was hit, the airport, other countries were going to get their own behind enemy lines, and Biden and his Pentagon weren't doing that.
They weren't. And I have to note, too, that the landscape, the tenor created by this administration of a tepid relationship with Israel, the atrocities occurring there, it is not a battlefield. It is not a war, as Israeli Major General said over there. It is a massacre. It is not human, the atrocities that are being committed over there. And for this administration to ignore thus far those Americans included in that, and to ignore thus far our greatest ally, but hearken back to the stage that he has set. It took him almost 1 month to call Netanyahu President Trump called Netanyahu 2 days after assuming office. And when they did speak, remember that the White House said in a terrible foreshadowing, and I think now in mere lip service, that they talked about the Iranian threat. They talked about the continued close consultation on Iran and that Biden intended to strengthen defense cooperation with Israel. What happened? He has set the tone for a lack of response, lack of Senate-confirmed elected officials, because at the time of the attack, the United States had no confirmed ambassadors to Israel, to Kuwait, to Oman, to Egypt, and more. The top human rights envoy position, the Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, that has been unfilled for the entirety of the Biden administration. USAID has not had a top Middle East official in nearly 3 years. So whatever we hear from Biden in an hour, note that those in place are not in contrast to maybe public position. We are well equipped and will lead a response worthy of these atrocities. I wonder who, because the people in those positions are interim. They are not equipped and they are not Senate confirmed. And the response needed for almost a quarter of a kibbutz being babies that were massacred alongside of their mothers and fathers, the smell of death, dogs being shot, us having to watch it on a GoPro on the head of a Hamas terrorist as they drained orange juice from their refrigerators and blasted human beings at point blank. For us to watch that and on CCTV a quarter of a mile away from the Gaza wall, this is a community that pools their collective profits for the betterment of a community dedicated to police. And now they are all massacred. By the way, it's still a live scene. Israeli soldiers are navigating booby traps there.
Right, and
that requires a response.
They had anticipated that to some degree. I had a reporter tell me last hour, though, who actually lives in Israel and reports the news there, that the reason why the kibbutz communities were hit so quickly is because they sit so close to the wall. Yes. And that they weren't necessarily, because I wondered, is it their orthodoxy? Is it like, what made them such a target? It was convenience and location. Yes. I want to ask you about venue, though. So when the president did finally talk to Benjamin Netanyahu, there was no invitation to the White House. So there's that part of it. But today he's speaking to the world, the nation, from the stateroom dining room, I believe. Is an Oval Office venue better? I mean, I just, you've been there. You understand the symbolism of these things.
Harris, at this point, it's hard to think about, should he be in the Oval Office? Should he be outside of the White House? Should he be at the press podium? Where should he be? He should be speaking. You have the world's largest microphone, Mr. President of the United States. It has been nearly 72 hours since we've heard from you. Why haven't you used it? Instead, for 72 hours, we've seen these images. Look at this. This is Gaza City. This is a smoldering ship from Hamas. Why is it smoldering? Well, if you've been reading the chyrons on the bottom of your screen, this is why it's smoldering. 40 babies found decapitated. 40 babies, some of whom were decapitated, more than 800 killed. We don't know how many children, but we know innocent babies. If you are a human, this should outrage you. I don't care, Palestinian, Hamas, we go Muslim, Jew, I don't care. These are humans. These are babies. This is why this is happening, and our president's been gone for 72 hours. Well, look at this. Let's talk about some of the people who have been kidnapped. 5-year-old Roz, 3-year-old Aviv. If you've seen the cover of the New York Post today, 2 beautiful, beautiful little babies, pink shoes, pink shirts. They're clearly smiling, happy. They're gone. They're in cages now. I asked Trey Inks yesterday, are these hostages being kept in cages? Yes, they are. They're being kept in cages. A 9-month-old. I have a 10-month-old boy at home. He's fed 5 times a day. You think Hamas is feeding that 9-month-old boy? No. We don't even know if that 9-month-old boy is still alive. These are the horrors. And one tweet I want to pull up. This is Avi Meyer, Jerusalem Post. And I believe we have pictures. We'll get to this in a moment. Pictures of those body bags of those 40 babies. So if we have those, you can go ahead and put those on the screen. Avi Meyer, Jerusalem Post. The stories from southern Israel get worse by the hour. Dana Perino flagged this morning. A woman found murdered with a fetus next to her, still attached to its umbilical cord. Look at those babies. And you had people in Times Square protesting. You had people protesting in Times Square, Harvard University students across the nation in support of Hamas. Give me a break. There are dead people in those body bags. This is about humanity. It is not nation versus nation, and our president's missing in action.
And you were right. It wouldn't matter where he spoke. To our enemies, though, seeing him from the civil office can look like he's thirsty for something bigger. And we've got the USS Gerald Ford in the water. So to me, to send the message to the world that you might step a toe in and do a whole lot, it needs to come from the highest office in the land, all the land. And to me, that's the Oval Office. But why not Netanyahu offered an invitation to the White House?
I don't know what's going on with this president. I don't care if he's lying in his bed and wants to bring a microphone to his bedside and speak there. I don't care. I care that for 72 hours, we have not heard from the man with the biggest microphone. I've seen guest after guest, Robert O'Brien, people from my administration, John Radcliffe. You had a former UN ambassador speak, Nikki Haley, a former president, Donald Trump, a former vice president, Mike Pence, but a current president of the United States, I don't know what he's doing, but it's inexcusable.
You know who he was talking to for 2 days? Robert Hur, the special counsel, on Sunday and Monday. I know that's important, but that couldn't be rescheduled. This was the greatest attack on Israel.
Bingo.
And the Jews since the Holocaust. There are dead babies. And there were tweets yesterday coming out of the White House, coming out of Biden's account, bragging about the economy and jobs and artificial intelligence. And then that black and white photograph that was clearly posed, they took all day.
And they called it lid in the morning,
to
so
put
they knew
at
it.
11:46 in the morning. That's where they were when that.
And that's when we found out that he would speak today. So it was a hard lid. That meant that there's nothing that's going to change after 11:46 in the morning yesterday. We can wait until tomorrow. 1 p.m. Eastern is what we're being told, and we'll cover it and show it to you live expeditiously the minute it starts with the President of the United States. And as Kayleigh put it, she doesn't care if he's calling from his bed in his slippers. He needs to have a microphone. I might have thrown the slippers in.
Yeah.
Because he looks like a guy that can't take the cold. But anyway, about this situation, where should we be politically? I'm so confused about what his political doctrine is. I know that a lot of it, Emily, seems to be wrapped up into the Iran deal, as if he wears that like the invisibility cloak. Let's just cover up all the bad policy, all the bad decisions, everything. Put that on if I can just make friends with Iran.
At a minimum, what we need to hear from him today is an absolute condemnation of the atrocities occurring on behalf of Hamas.
And you didn't hear that on Saturday.
As a proxy through Iran, and no, we did not. What we need to hear is an absolute recognition that Iran is behind Hamas and Hezbollah and the rockets coming from two different sides of Israel. What we need to hear is, what we won't hear, but what we need to hear is an apology from this president for capitulating to Iran, in stark contrast to his comments to President Netanyahu 2 years ago, in stark contrast to what we have as Americans believed in, which is that our strongest ally, our most righteous ally, has always been Israel. And by the way, at the time, Israeli diplomats raised concern about that delay. They said, what message does this send? Does this president not value the relationship as much as President Trump and others have? Clearly, the answer, given the Iran capitulation, the loosening of sanctions, despite what Kirby says, and the unfreezing of that $6 billion, essentially the funding of the murder of babies and the elderly and the terrible, shameful atrocities occurring right now, that is on Biden's shoulders. And this administration is ill-equipped to now manage and respond and lead it because they are missing everyone at the top. But most importantly, we are missing a commander-in-chief that should have stepped up 2 days ago immediately to contend this action and join Israeli and fight side by side with them.
Well, as Afghanistan was falling, it took 6 days to hear from them. So let that sink in. And by the way, there was a meeting described by Politico as the oh bleep moment when they knew that Kabul could fall. And the president still chose to go to Delaware the following day. That meeting was on a Wednesday. He went to Delaware on a Thursday until he was pushed to go to Camp David.